Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Infinite Crossover, recorded live here at Walker Design Studios, official home for Fanboys Incorporated, and the satellite headquarters for capelesscrusader.org. And as always, joining me via Skype is the creator of capelesscrusader.org and a good personal friend of mine, Mr. Josh Epstein. How are you, sir?
I am doing pretty well. Managed to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 times in the last week, so I think it'll probably be the last time I go see it in theaters. But
I just saw it as we are live. Guys, we were live, if you want to tweet us some questions about Guardians or when we get into our topic, you can tweet us at Fanboys Inc. I just saw it. Literally just got out of the theater. Loved it. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 right off the bat. To get the full details, check out this Wednesday's Infinite Crossover Inkcast, where Joe and I finally get to talk about it. He saw it last week, and it was a little tough because I know he wanted to spoil it, but we have a rule here: we give it a full week before we give any spoilers. But I enjoyed it; it was fun. I mean, and the theater was still packed. I can't believe it's still packed.
see, the last time I went to a 10:30 matinee with my girls, specifically so it wouldn't be packed. But I mean, it was still a pretty good-sized crowd, even at 10:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah, and Turtles took it out of #1 spot.
Yeah, that makes me sad,
It doesn't make me
honestly,
sad. Why does it make you sad? Come
because Turtles
on.
was not a very good movie.
Did you see it?
I did. It's not a
Oh,
very good movie at all.
oh crap. You don't ruin it for me. I do want to go see it. Is it at least fun?
Uh,
It's not even
eh.
fun?
I mean, it tries really hard, but I'm sorry, like, Megan Fox can't act her way out of a paper bag. At one point in the movie, they actually do have a paper bag over her head, and I'm like, oh, she can't act her way out of that.
Also joining us tonight is our visiting assistant producer, Mr. Gus. He is sitting here. You might hear him chime in a little bit because he's a little mouthy tonight.
I saw
Um,
that picture you posted on Facebook. He looks pretty pissed you didn't give him a mic.
yeah, a little bit. Sure, I don't get a mic. Well, I'm going to lay on your books. So
He's
here you
gonna start
go.
knocking stuff off the table.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's on the floor. I just posted a pic earlier today, or just a few seconds ago. So he's laying on the floor. He's like, if you don't give me the mic, I'm just going to lay on your books. So what is that with cats wanting to lay on things? That's the one.
I don't see, like, the cat that I had that we had when I lived with Jay, who people who read Capeless will know that he used to be one of our regular contributors. He didn't like lay on books. He would just walk over to the table on New Comic Book Day, as we had finished bagging and boarding everything, and he would stare at you right in the eye as he reached up onto the table and slowly, like a little inch at a time, pulled the books off the table and onto the
Like
floor.
watch you like take that, take that, take that. That's
Yeah,
funny.
exactly. So, I mean, I think Charlie was just a hater. No, I shouldn't say that. I love that cat. He was the best.
He's awesome.
Um,
But let's get into today's topic. I off pod a few days ago. I saw a post about San Diego Comic-Con. I figured, all right, San Diego's over with now for about a week. But what more news can we get? Well, we got some more news. So why don't you fill in our listeners of what
so
San Diego's
the
doing?
initial article that I saw was tagged with a great headline that said, "Begun the Con Wars have," and really, so here's the breakdowns. San Diego filed a complaint in the U.S. District Court for federal trademark infringement against Salt Lake Comic Con. Now, they allege in the complaint that they have registered trademark and exclusive rights to the phrase to the Comic Con, and that Salt Lake did irreparable damage to their brand by bringing an Audi branded with their image, which says Salt Lake Comic Con, to a nearby hotel. They didn't bring it to the same hotel that San Diego Comic Con was at. They brought it to a nearby hotel and had pictures taken in it with people like Arrow's Manu Bennett. So San Diego is basically trying to get a cease and desist against Salt Lake from using the word Comic Con, saying that they have exclusive rights to it, that they were they say they have invested an extraordinary amount of time, effort, and expense developing what is now the premier comic book and popular arts convention in the world. That they have been the industry leader since 1970. Now, there are a couple of reasons that this is a little bit tricky. So the first being that San Diego is not the first Comic-Con. The first Comic-Con was in 1964 and was in New York City, and it was New York Comic-Con. Now, the current version of New York Comic-Con is affiliated with the same parent company that runs San Diego, Comic-Con International.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no dispute with, New York and San Diego. We're not going to see this transition into, but if by some chance San Diego
East
were
Coast
to
versus
win,
West Coast.
yeah, if by some chance San Diego were to win, that wouldn't mean that New York Comic-Con specifically would have to rebrand, but a lot of places would. Chicago, Salt Lake City,
Every con.
Denver.
Every con, though, even the small ones would have to, correct?
Yeah, you would basically, if San Diego were to win, every convention nationwide would be that's not affiliated with Comic-Con International would be prohibited from using Comic-Con. Now, in the complaint, they say that they would be okay with Salt Lake using Salt Lake Comic Convention. And reading a couple of the comments over on Salt Lake's discussion about this, because they of course posted an immediate legal response to their website. Obviously, they're going to fight it in court. Salt Lake is one of probably the fastest growing new convention in the country. They're only a year old, and I want to say they did something like 60 to 75% of San Diego's audience last year, which is insane.
And Emerald City's growing pretty big too, as well.
Emerald City's growing pretty big. I mean, the Kansas City the convention here in Kansas City goes by KC Comic Con or KCCC. There's Chicago, there's Dallas, all of them use Comic-Con at this point. Probably because it's cheaper to pay a printer to put Comic-Con on your posters than it is Comic Convention.
Well, it's easier to say.
It is. And so there are a couple of, to break down San Diego's argument, I've got the full complaint up here, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes if you want to read it. But let me pull up their allegations here. They claim that the defendants used SDCC's Comic-Con mark. Now, I want to point out specifically that when San Diego says this in their complaint, they have the same hyphen that appears in all of their promotional materials, Comic-Con.
Right.
Mark to advertise and promote the Salt Lake Comic-Con convention through mediums other than the internet. They mention the Audi R8 that was brought to a nearby hotel, and they say it was driven around the Comic-Con convention locale in San Diego. Just to stop for a second, that to me seems a little specious, saying that they drove this car around San Diego. I mean, like I said to you before we started recording, I think it's in a little bit poor taste. It's kind of similar to, if you dress yourself up as the Domino's, what was his name?
Oh yeah, that
dweeb or whatever, the Domino's guy, and you're driving a few blocks away from Papa John's in Circle, advertising Domino's pizza. Yeah, that's in a little bit poor taste.
But listen, from a marketing standpoint, during San Diego, where there's going to be thousands and thousands of people, your con is not that weekend. Why I would be, as a savvy marketer, I'm going to promote my con that's going to be, a week out, 2 weeks away? I don't necessarily 100% agree with you that it was in bad taste or kind of shoddy. I mean, that's marketing. That's capturing your audience, a possible audience. And if it was the same weekend, I'll be 100% agreement with you going, that's pretty shady.
Well, I mean, it would be silly to do it the same weekend regardless, because you're not going to convince a bunch of people who have just traveled to San Diego to travel to Salt Lake City.
Right, but you understand my point. It's a whole different, it's 2 weeks away.
So the next section of that goes into what they believe the actual true harm is. And I'll just read this verbatim, and maybe if we've got any lawyers listening, they can weigh in on this. They say, SDCC is informed and believes, and thereon alleges, that by driving the vehicle skinned with SDCC's Comic-Con, they misspell their own trademark, by the way, mark in and around the vicinity of SDCC Comic-Con convention, defendants intended to create a false association between the Salt Lake Comic-Con convention and the Comic-Con convention. One, I think it's just ridiculous that we have to keep saying Comic-Con convention. Con is short for convention.
Yep.
Or to suggest that SDCC sponsored, endorsed, or was otherwise affiliated with the Salt Lake Comic-Con convention. Neither is true. SDCC is further informed and believes and thereon alleges that by using the Comic-Con mark in this manner during the 2014 Comic-Con convention to promote defendants' upcoming convention, defendants intended to confuse and deceive Comic-Con convention attendees, exhibitors, and fans into believing that Salt Lake Comic-Con convention is sponsored by or otherwise affiliated with SDCC's Comic-Con convention and or SDCC. So what they're saying there is that they believe and allege, they're on legal mumbo-jumbo, that it was the intention of the promoters for Salt Lake City to create the impression that their convention was associated with and sponsored by the same people that promote and sponsor SDCC.
Well, right off the bat, the car with the logos, was there Comic-Con International logo on that car?
There was not.
There was not. Did it say sponsored by?
It did not.
Right off the bat, right there, does their logo in any similar form look like San Diego's Comic-Con logo?
No, and you can weigh on this from a graphic design standpoint.
Yep.
The San Diego logo is very distinctive. You've got comic coming up the left side and con across the top. The logo, for those who are just listening and haven't had a chance to look at it yet, says Salt Lake in smaller text, and then just below that, in probably double the size of Salt Lake, straight across horizontally says Comic-Con.
And different colors.
With no hyphen. Yeah. Different color scheme. It's white and black on red.
Yep.
It looks nothing like the San Diego Comic-Con.
They got no case.
International market.
They have no case, even from a graphic standpoint. You mean, I've seen cases where it's been petty to the point where you're trying to copyright your logo and it's Times Roman numeral. Come on. I guarantee, and Salt Lake doesn't even use the same font that San Diego uses, so you don't even have to worry about that as well. And that car did not state sponsored by or have the international logo on it. They have no case.
The other segment to this is that the front bumper, and there's another picture. I'll send you the link to it so you can put that in the show notes too. The front bumper, they removed where the license plate would ordinarily be, and it said Comic-Con.
So
it was like gold raised text. But again, it doesn't have the same look to it at all.
Right.
It doesn't even have the hyphen that's specifically associated with San Diego's trademark. So
and you
I
can't
have
copyright.
a really hard time seeing how where their case.
You
is,
can't
really.
copyright or trademark a general term.
No,
No, but I can
that's
say
actually part of Salt Lake's defense. Salt Lake's defense is that the term is now that Comic-Con is now a generic term that can be used under fair use.
Now, to kind of go against that, now Marvel owned the copyright to the word zombie for a long time. Now, I don't know the logistics of that. I'm not sure how you can do that, but they copyrighted that term, and I'm not sure what the legal ramifications would that be and how they could have got around that. It is a name, but so is Comic-Con, so I'm not really sure, but as far as I know, you can't do that. Comic-Con, whatever. That means that every comic convention in the United States or in the world has to change it to convention or comic book show, and I think that's ridiculous. And didn't they go against Chicago a few years ago for the same thing?
They did. In 1995, they tried to assert that Chicago Comic-Con was doing the same thing, and they lost. In fact, the actual trademark that they have right now for Comic-Con wasn't registered until 2005.
Okay.
Which is 35 years after the first San Diego Comic-Con.
Right. Okay. It just strikes me. I can understand if it's a logo or it's a brand issue, identity issue. Also, you're confusing thousands and thousands of your patrons with one fucking car. I'm sorry for my language. It's kind of irritating. I mean, you were worried that you might lose business or confuse. I doubt it. You don't have a building. You don't have an arrow saying, come to our con by the adjacent hotel. You're not selling tickets. It's just a car. I don't see the problem here. And if you're that big, what are you worried about?
So Salt Lake's response basically boils down to this, and I'm reading from their website, which is saltlakecomiccon.com, where they say, much like you did, there are Comic Cons around the country and the world that are not affiliated with San Diego Comic Con International. Why single out Salt Lake Comic Con? Well, I think the answer to that's pretty obvious. They're singling out Salt Lake because Salt Lake drove a car to their convention. San Diego wasn't the first Comic Con. According to the history books, Comic Cons originated in New York and the United Kingdom at least 6 years before the first San Diego event. Comic Con is short for Comic Convention. In trademark law, fair use occurs when a descriptive mark is used in good faith for its primary rather than secondary meaning, and no consumer confusion is likely to result. Now that's where they might. I could easily see them getting into a little bit of hot water with a jury when they look at this.
As far as what, Josh?
Well, with that specific phrase, where it says rather than its secondary meaning, and no consumer confusion is likely to result. I could easily see, I doubt very much that a jury is going to come back and say that Salt Lake is no longer allowed to use Comic-Con as part of their name.
Right.
I could easily see them being issued an injunction against driving an Audi to San Diego next year. Because you could make the argument that consumer confusion was likely to occur by another convention's vehicle being at that convention. Just like the analogy I made earlier, that if there are signs up for pizza sale down the road, and the pizza sale's happening at a Papa John's, and a guy in the Domino's suit is standing between a couple of those signs, then yes, there's going to be some confusion.
If the sale is correct, if the sale is going on at the exact same time, but the con's not going on at the exact same time, and it doesn't say sponsored by or have the international logo on it.
And I'm not on the jury. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not a lawyer, but I could. That's one area where I could see them maybe having a little bit of something as the idea of consumer confusion based on that specific incident.
Well, we have a tweet here, Josh, from Glenn McAfee. How are you, sir? Do you think SDCC fears not being the biggest con down the road?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that they are definitely invested in being the largest event. They repeatedly mention that in their complaint, and I know that there's a issue up with the San Diego Council right now talking about a massive expansion to the convention center and to the Hyatt, mostly due to San Diego, or to the comic convention, because at this point the convention has vastly outgrown that single hotel and that single venue. I mean, I don't know if you've ever looked at trying to get hotel rooms in San Diego
it's
on
crazy.
that weekend.
It's crazy.
You could like.
They're probably already sold out already for next year.
Oh, I know that hotel rooms at the Hyatt, which is the hotel immediately adjacent to the San Diego Convention Center, they are sold out. They're already sold out for next year's San Diego.
On a side note, I just saw the picture of this Audi, this R8. When a con can afford an R8, I want to know what you're doing right, because that's on a side note. That's a total side note.
Yeah, Salt Lake has been doing a lot right. They were
a lot of goddamn money for that car.
They were the third biggest convention last year, and I think I read that they were only about 31,000 people away from being the second biggest. Okay. So right now, if you're looking at rankings nationwide for this last year, it goes San Diego, New York, Salt Lake City.
I'm going to we'll post this in the on the podcast notes of this particular car. I'm looking at it right now. You're right, Josh. Salt Lake Comic-Con. No font similarity to font. It says right on the back, right in front of the rear, September 4th and 6th, 2014. It has a big Comic-Con sticker with the mountains, Salt Lake Comic-Con right on the hood. No yellows, no big eye, nothing to confuse people as far as the branding's concerned.
And speaking of that big eye, it just makes me think, I joked that San Diego wants to be the one con to rule them all. They may want to think about changing their branding to not include the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, there you go. Take note to that, San Diego.
And there go our press passes that we might never get.
Yes, now. Right? Well, you never know. Bad PR is better than no PR. You know what? What bothers me the most, I think, about this, Josh, is from the start and the creation of Fanboys Incorporated, and I might even be able to speak for you as well with CapelessCrusader.org, is this community. we knew that the popularity of comics due to movies, TV shows, comic books themselves is growing. It's growing and growing, and we haven't reached the peak yet. We know more Comic Cons are coming. This kind of petty, ludicrous crap, as far as I'm going to call it, kind of hurts our community and does not make it look good for outsiders looking in.
No, it doesn't. I mean, this kind of dispute is never good for the overall community. It's never good for the people, like you say, on the outside looking in. And my concern would be that, let's say by some miracle, San Diego Comic-Con International actually does manage to win this case. It's going to mean fewer cons in the future. It's going to mean that people who want to go to conventions in a regional area, that those conventions aren't going to be as immediately recognizable as comic conventions. You're going to see more confusion, I think, in terms of what kind of convention things are. We talked last week about how, or on the last episode, about how some of these conventions are getting taken over by multimedia, and San Diego even mentions that it's related art forms, that they are not specifically just a comic convention in their complaint. That we'll see more of these mishmash conventions as opposed to specifically comic conventions, because if San Diego were to win, you wouldn't be able to refer to your convention as a Comic-Con.
Right. Correct. I don't know. It just bothers me I don't know. I mean, are they threatened? And I guess I should ask this because I don't know, and I'm not sure if you are. How could your Comic-Con or convention be part of Comic-Con International?
That's a really good question. I don't know what the audit process is for Comic-Con International as far as adding affiliates, affiliate conventions. I know that they control as we said earlier, the New York City Comic-Con. There was another one listed, and I'm going to find that here in their complaint. Anaheim Comic-Con.
Okay.
They also control Anaheim Comic-Con. They list 4 registered trademarks in their complaint. The first one being San Diego Comic-Con International, which is the one that we all think of. It's got the San Diego and little bitty text up at the top, and then we talked about that, and it's got the all-seeing Eye of Sauron and the International down at the bottom. That they have a registered trademark for Comic-Con, and they have a registered trademark for Comic-Con International with no hyphen, and Anaheim Comic-Con.
Obviously, they're smart. They're covering their bases, but still, I just don't. I don't know. I feel that it's kind of ludicrous. I don't know how to go. I don't even know how to respond to that. If
anything, I feel that Salt Lake City was actually very cautious in choosing to omit the hyphen. Because obviously San Diego has a registered trademark for Comic-Con.
Correct.
They do not have a registered trademark for Comic Space Con.
Hold on a second. Let me go through those notes again. Your trademark.
So this is this is on page 5 of the complaint. I sent you the PDF.
Right. Is the trademark San Diego Comic-Con or just Comic-Con?
The first trademark
is it the full word?
Okay, the first trademark is an image trademark.
Yep, of course.
It's this is on page 5, line 4. This paragraph 13 of their complaint, and it's that stamp size landscape that we've talked about. That's the image that's trademarked. Is that specific image? Okay. The second one is U.S. Service Mark 3219568, and that's the text in capital letters Comic-Con.
What does it say? One more time, please.
Comic-Con.
Not San Diego.
Comic-Con.
So it's just Comic Okay. That does make a difference, Josh. That makes a huge difference.
But again, it's that hyphen, I think, is where they're going to get themselves in trouble making this complaint, because none of the materials used by Salt Lake City include that hyphen.
Right, correct. And that's gonna be helpful. I don't think they're gonna win this case anyway, but they could win it just off that.
Conceivably, but the trademark that they tried to apply for in 1995 was for Comic Space Con, and that was rejected.
Because it's a general term.
Because it's a general term, exactly.
What if you just put it as one word, Comic-Con?
Again, that would be separate. That would be a different phrase. Okay. It's kind of like how if I wanted to, I could go, to make something similar. I could release a comic called Peter Spider-Man.
Right.
Um, and yes, Marvel might be able to, argue that I had created brand confusion, but I don't think that they would be able to win that I had violated their trademark.
No, what
Because
they'll
the trademark is for Spider-Man.
right.
As
And
any nerd on a comic book
yes.
discussion board will get angry at you if you forget, the hyphen,
Oh
it's
yeah,
for
but
very
fine.
specific reasons.
And Stanley is very big on that hyphen. Very big on that
He is,
hyphen.
he is, and I think that's because Stan Lee, as a very savvy businessman, understands this copyright law very well. It's just like how a publisher of a book on um, Aryan eugenics can use super dash man in the title of their book.
Right. Correct.
They can't use Superman
Right.
without permission from Warner Brothers. And there have been people that have gotten permission from Warner Brothers to
Right.
do that.
What
Like I've got a great book, Superman on the Couch, where they got permission to do that.
what would probably happen, let's say with your Peter Spider-Man, that Marvel would take you to court and beat you because they have a bigger wallet.
Exactly. They would tie me up in court for 20 years or until I ran out of money, and then I would just be like, fine, I'll stop publishing Peter Spider-Man.
Our pod brother Philip Royal says it's a civil case. It'll be settled out of court. I'm sure. I don't even think it's going to be settled out of court. I don't think any. What are you going to get out of this? There's no
It's
money.
interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I would not be at all surprised to see Salt Lake City choose not to settle.
Oh, I could see them standing up for the little guy.
Because well, it's not just that. They have nothing to lose here, really.
Correct.
I mean, just from what we're looking at, and I really wish we could have a lawyer in to weigh in on this. From what we've talked about, we don't think they're going to lose the case.
Mm-mm.
And San Diego, regardless of the merits of this case, is the biggest comic convention in the world. They are the most recognizable comic convention in the world. From Salt Lake City's point of view, any time that a news article is published, this podcast,
exactly.
anytime that their name is mentioned next to San Diego increases their profile. The longer this case goes on, the better it is for Salt Lake City.
And that's the first thing I thought of. I'm like, thanks, San Diego. Keep it up. Keep talking about it.
It really is counterproductive. Now, like you said, they're not directly competing with them.
No, definitely not. And now, in a way, I can see this, and we've talked with some creators where we've seen cons that are a week or two apart within the general vicinity of each other, causing problems. Like if you go to one con 2 weeks before another con and it's, let's say, 50 to 100 miles away, the later con promoter feels that you slighted him because you were just at this other con that's close by. And that's caused some problems with creators. We've had a few on here saying the same thing because this has happened to them. That would for me be a problem for for Salt Lake, but it obviously doesn't seem to be a problem. That's the only problem I really see, and it's more on Salt Lake City side than it is on San Diego side, where I'm sure there's going to be some of the guests. I guarantee that some of the guests that were at San Diego are going to be at Salt Lake. I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah.
But once again, they're not competing. As far as I'm concerned, is it in bad taste? I don't know. I think it's a savvy marketing. As far as I'm concerned, that's a savvy marketing ploy to go and drive by and capture people in line or people walking by. The car is literally has no confusion as far as sponsored by. No, the dates are different. No logos around the car. I see it as a marketing strategy. That's what I see. Now, at the same time, I could almost see that maybe Salt Lake was hoping for this in a way. I mean, this is PR. This is PR.
Very much that they wanted to go to court.
No, but
anybody chooses.
I'm not saying the
litigation.
court. No, I understand. I'm not saying the court, but that San Diego might put up a stink about it. They are getting a lot of free PR out of this right now.
Oh, they most definitely are, and I think they'll continue.
It's almost like they go to them on to do it on purpose.
Possibly,
it's like
possibly.
What is it to get, Josh?
I think San Diego is the one that stands to lose a lot here. They're
How?
losing a lot of it's primarily in fan goodwill. I know that this has decreased my personal desire to go to San Diego.
As mine.
Because it does seem really petty. It seems like you're the big kid on the block and you're getting ticked off because somebody else opened another lemonade stand a few blocks over that also happens to sell lemonade and says lemonade stand on it. And so you say, no, I'm the only lemonade stand. I'm the only one that can say lemonade stand. You can continue to sell lemonade, but you just have to call your stand sugary lemon drink stand.
Right. I mean, I still don't think it's going to get settled out of the courts. One of the two is not going to back off.
No, I think that they're going to, if I'm Salt Lake City, I want this to go to a trial by jury.
Yep, by far. I totally agree with you. And what let's talk about. All right, what is it to gain from San Diego? Just to get your name? So that means you just pissed off every other con in the United States. If they win, what is there to gain?
I think it was a very poorly advised knee-jerk reaction.
I agree.
Honestly, I think that there was not enough thought that went into this in terms of the PR ramifications, in terms of the financial ramifications of what it's going to do. Well, I mean, let's be honest. They're always going to be full to capacity.
Always.
I mean, barring the complete implosion of the comic book industry and Marvel Studios and Warner Brothers, the convention is in no real trouble. But I think that in terms of how the press chooses to cover them moving forward, you're going to see a far more critical eye, no pun intended, towards San Diego with their big eye, directed towards the organizers of San Diego and towards Comic-Con International in general.
For me, it looks very unprofessional. It's like the biggest boy on the block is crying for no reason at all. It really does. It's like the bully in the playground. This is BS as far as I'm concerned. It's just petty. I could see if maybe San Diego lost thousands and thousands of dollars possibly, and then they might have just rights to at least go. Doesn't mean they're going to win. But what did they lose? What, maybe
I could see them, claiming damages for time lost. If you think about, let's say that, I'll just toss a number out there, that 1,000 people went to see the Salt Lake City Audi at the hotel a couple blocks away when Manu Bennett was checking it out. They're not there at the San Diego Convention Center.
They paid their tickets already, didn't they?
Yeah, they're not on the floor spending. So that's where I could see them conceivably, claiming some damages.
Well, that's not their fault. That's not their problem. It's the vendor's problem at that point not spending the money. If they already paid for their tickets, it's the vendors that lost money.
But if you're filtering that on down the road, then when they're looking at what they can charge vendors in the future, vendors are going to look at what vendors in the past have made, and if that bottom line comes down, then they're going to be able to charge less for vendor space in the future.
That's a stretch, Josh.
It is a stretch, but if there's supporting documentation to back that argument up, which there probably is out there.
If you find 10 vendors bitching because that Audi was out there, you might that would suck.
Yeah.
I mean, but once again, how you going to prove that? How can you prove that whoever was at that Audi was going to go to your booth? That's the other thing.
One interesting way that one sort of X factor that might pop up here is Audi themselves, because Audi did have an official presence at San Diego.
Yeah, because they're tied in very heavily with Avengers and Marvel.
Yes, they are. Tony Stark loves driving his Audis.
The R8. No less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you could conceivably see Audi weighing in on the side of San Diego, and if that happens, that could throw a monkey wrench into the works a little bit.
That would give bad press for Audi at the same time, and I bet you
I bet you their PR people are telling them stay as far away from this as possible.
Guarantee you they're not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
Because it was their car that's part of Salt Lake as well. That would ruin their brand by far. People would weigh in on that more than the San Diego lawsuit at that point.
Yeah, I really don't think you're going to see that happen. I don't think you're going to see the publishers come down on either side in this. I think that this is going to remain strictly limited to San Diego Comic-Con. I could see the convention center getting in on it a little bit.
Right. Now, let's talk about, let's say, whether or not it gets settled out of court, but let's say there's guidelines. Could it be put in place that Salt Lake City can't drive their car within a 10-mile radius of that convention?
I could see that.
Okay.
And honestly, if I were on the jury and trying to come up with some sort of reasonable solution that both sides could
that would be my only reasonable solution.
That would be my middle ground.
Yeah.
Is okay. Salt Lake City, you guys are barred from displaying any promotional material of any kind for your convention within a 10-mile radius of the San Diego Convention Center during the time that San Diego Comic-Con is going on.
I bring this up, but I do not agree with it. I will be the first to say that I still don't agree with that, but that could be the middle ground. I still think that's kind of stupid, but I could see that possibly happening. Now, let's carry this on to other cons in the United States. Are we going to start seeing, even if San Diego loses, are we going to start seeing, you know, possibly smaller cons going after other cons, and maybe not necessarily this type of legal action as far as the brand confusion, but could we start seeing, you know, internal fighting, a little fight club going on between one con to another because they're either a week apart, they're 100 miles apart. Now that there's so many of these cons popping up all over the United States, from March till November, there's a con every weekend somewhere in the United States, if not 2 or 3.
Well, I think that it's a possibility, but really, I would say only in some of the larger markets. I don't think you're going to see, for instance, Dallas and Kansas City get into it.
No, of course, yeah.
Because nobody really wants to make the 8.5-hour drive from Kansas City to Dallas, right, or vice versa.
Well, we have one, and we have 2 cons in Connecticut, and they
how
are
close together are they?
They're a week or 2 apart, 3 or 4 weeks apart, something like that.
And what do they call themselves?
They're both cons.
Right, but like what's
one's
the
Connecticut Comic Con, and that's coming up this weekend. The other one is it's not
Hartford.
Yes, it's the Hartford Con.
Hartford Con.
Yeah.
And see, there's no case to be made there. One
Correct.
is the Connecticut Comic Con. One is the Hartford Comic Con.
But you could say this.
That's like you're not going to see New York City Comic Con going after Albany.
Correct, but that's what San Diego's doing right now. Correct?
Right. Now, if the promoters at Albany chose to drive a bus to New York City Comic Con and park it 2 blocks away, then I could see New York City having a legit gripe. Now, what would be kind of funny is that if San Diego just outright loses it, if Comic Con International outright loses this case, I think that it's going to open up the floodgates for almost con promoter trolling.
Oh my God, we're gonna see cars outside of, that could cause a problem.
Right, and that personally, I would find that hilarious.
Oh, so would I. But remember, we've seen, and I've seen this firsthand, where cons, and I'm not naming any names or any of the cons, working well with other cons, great supporters of cons. And I've seen just the opposite, like what we were seeing here with San Diego, where they're not supporting another con, or they're not supporting the community as a whole. Now, let's say we do the Albany bus. What if we're all going on the bus to go to the con? I mean, we're supporting you. Let's go. Yeah, it says Albany Comic Con on it, and we're in November. You're now, but we're bringing people to your con. We're visiting. We're showing support. I don't necessarily know if I would cause that as a problem. Of course, I want to advertise my own con that's in November and travel 5 hours away. That's great PR right there. You know how many eyes see that bus driving from New York to Connecticut? I think that's great. I mean, if it was an empty bus, totally parked right across the street, maybe I might question that. But once again, we're back to the San Diego and Salt Lake City thing again. It's marketing. It's not on the same weekend. Not all the guests are exactly the same. I mean, you're always going to have, some guests go from one con to another. That's just the way it is. You have your popular guests. I mean, that's how it is. I mean, I personally feel that, I don't know. I just feel that no con should be bashing another con, no matter what the league, whatever stance you have, whether it's because you think there's brand confusion. I mean, obviously, there's exceptions to the rule. I mean, if one logo looks exactly like the other, I can understand that. But aren't we all supposed to just get along? I mean, this makes our community bigger. This makes it worse now.
I tend to agree. I really do. And I'm going to obviously be following this whole case really closely as it continues.
I think this is a capelesscrusader.org article coming.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to, once we finish up on the podcast today, I am planning on doing a story over on Capeless just to bring those listeners or readers who don't have time to really listen to an hour-long podcast up to speed on everything that's going on.
A few weeks ago, a few times on Inkcast here and also here on Infinite Crossover, we've talked about the pros and cons, no pun intended, of growing Comic Cons. This type of thing, not the actual lawsuit, but this type of one con going after another con is a major con. This is something that possibly could happen with other cons, other problems, other issues, the guest situation. and I've stated this before, that it's going to hurt the creators, I think, more so than the individual cons, because cons are upset that you were at this con 2 weeks ago and now you're coming here and you're so close to me. Why should I have you here? Or they've taken away the free table and now are charging you $500-$600 for that table that you've never been charged for before. And those kind of things bother me, and I can see that happening as more and more cons come into play.
Well, I think really where the arms race is concerned as far as Comic-Cons go is the guests. You're going to people go to these things, one, because they're close to them, but if you've got multiple conventions that are close to you, then it really does boil down to the guests.
Correct.
I mean, I want to go and I want to talk to writers because I'm a huge writers
of course.
guy. I want to go and I want to get.
And I'm on Grant
Morrison. If Grant Morrison is showing up, I'm gonna go because I want to just be like, look, I have a shaved head too. We're Scout Brothers.
And I'm media and artists. That's me. That's why I go to the cons.
And so I think that's really where, as I said, the arms race is. It's trying to nail down these creators. And like we talked about last episode, there are some of them that just can't go to all the conventions that invite them, so they have to be choosy.
Correct.
And and that's going to be up to them and on that specific creator's personal preferences, whether it's their schedule, whether they want to share stage space or be more of a featured guest, or if they want to, say there's a number of people going that they really like to hang out with and they want to do a panel with them. That might be why they choose to go to a convention A over convention B. And that's not really anything that is completely in the control of even the con promoters.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, obviously you could say that to a certain extent they do control the guest list, but say that there's creator X who is trying to choose between Con A and Con B, and Con A has creators blah and blah and blah and blah, and this creator really likes that group of creators and they want to go to that convention because they want to do a panel with them or want to be able to hang out with them in the hotel after the convention's over. There's not really anything promoter B, of convention B can do about that. He can't also go and get those 5 guests if they're not willing to come. So it's not really that person's fault if this specific creator chooses to go to convention A instead of convention B.
Right. Correct. You're correct.
Now, promoter for convention A did an awesome job nailing down those 4 guests that particular creator wanted to do, but that's just their good work.
Well, we've known in the past too, and we've heard from like Cliff Galbraith and even Mitchell from Connecticut. You're going to be and Albany. You're going to be you have to book out guests almost a year and a half out in advance now because of the demand and the pop-ups of all these other cons. You want your guests to come back, so all these other cons are pushing. It's making more work for your each of your con promoters. They have to book way out in advance now to make sure that these guys come. They don't want to double book.
It's just like what we do. I mean, just trying to get guests for this show, and we do have some awesome ones coming up.
Yes, I can't wait.
I mean, just trying to get guests for this show is insane because at this point there are dozens, if not hundreds, of different comic book podcasts, and everybody wants that guest that's going to bump their listens from 100 a week to 1,000 that week.
Right.
Or in our case, we would like to get that guest that's going to bump us from 2,500 in a week to 10,000 in 1 week. We want to take that next big jump, and so everybody's trying to get these guests. And con promoters face much the same challenge. Now, there aren't as many cons as there are podcasts, and you can tell that by the number of podcast hosts that you can run into at any convention.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But it's the same type of battle,
and we don't do what other podcasts do.
You know who actually wins in this are the creators.
How so?
Well, it's supply and demand. If it turns into how much are you willing to pay me for my appearance, and now there's say you are you're talking
about a bidding war. Yeah, you're talking about a bidding war.
Scott Snyder, and convention A tells you, well, we're willing to pay you $5,000 for your weekend. Then convention B comes to you. You could be a dick and tell convention B, well, convention A offered me $5,000. I haven't told them yes yet.
Yeah, you're going to do a bidding war.
What are you willing to offer me? And then convention B says, well, we're willing to go 6.5. And then you go back to Convention A and they say, hey, Convention B just called me. They're offering me 6.5. Is there any way you could go a little higher? Next thing you know, Scott Snyder just makes $10,000 in one weekend.
Or the con can't afford you and you made nothing.
Well, that's just, you got to know when to hold them, know when to hold them, as the gambler says.
I don't necessarily. I know, and I can say this. Mark McKenna, it feels that it hurts him, and he's getting flack from it in a way because he's at all these cons, and you start spreading your fan base to a con promoter's like, well, you're not coming. If you were here 2 weeks ago, or you were close to me 2 weeks ago, why are those fans going to come see me? You want to draw. And he did say, and I did bring this up just like you, there could be a bidding war. You could make more money. You also could be like, well, most of these cons can't afford that type of money, so either they pay your money that you get and just have fewer guests because they just used a larger portion of their budget. You know who hurts in that? The fans. I mean,
oh, yeah.
Overall, the fans hurt. So, I mean, are we kind of saying that there could possibly be more cons than pros at this point?
No, I don't think that's quite the case yet. Because when you look around out there, comics is a relatively small industry.
It is, but it's not as small as it was a year ago.
Not as small as it was a year ago. I'm talking about the size of the actual group of people that works in comics. Yes. Okay. But that is continuously growing. You think about 4 years ago, somebody like Jeff Lemire was nowhere near comics. He wasn't working in comics.
Right.
And now, Jeff Lemire would be a draw.
Yes.
But everybody that was working in comics before Jeff Lemire got there is also still a draw because they still have their fans. So the more people, as time goes on and as the art form continues to grow and as the fan base continues to grow, then there are going to be more and more options available for these creators or for the con promoters. Now you could, where, say, 10, 15 years ago, you might have needed Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and I'm struggling to think of some huge names.
Rob Liefeld.
Now you can go and get Matt Kint and Jeff Lemire and Jordi Belair, and you're not going to get the exact same, huge numbers that you might get with a Todd McFarlane or a Jim Lee, but you can do well for yourself bringing in newer people that they're still just as good and just as important to the industry today, but probably are going to be a lot cheaper because their fan base is a little bit smaller, and there are just more of them around. And maybe they're younger, they've got more energy, they're more willing to travel.
No, I understand that. The other thing is too, possibly negative for the fans. Costs start going up as ticket prices go up because now there's a bidding war. Now we got the Scott Snyders and the Greg Capullos asking for more money. Now our ticket prices go up.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest negative that stands to happen from all of this is exactly that. If it does turn into a bidding war for creators, you are going to see a rise in ticket prices. Same thing that happens in professional sports. You look at the cost of a baseball ticket 50 years ago when players were making at most $100,000 a year, and that was obscene. And now you look at the cost of a ticket today when players are making $125 million a year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a bit of a different story.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The sad thing is when all of a sudden when the ticket prices go up, who gets the rap for that? The con promoter. Now, you need to be behind the scenes. You like having those Jim Lees and Jeff Johns? You got to understand this is a business. And, I hate to hear, and we've heard it, that people are yelling at the con promoters when they're increasing in pricing. Now, some cons are a little bit ludicrous on their pricing. That's just like in any business. You're going to either get your fries on the dollar menu or you're going to go get your fries for $3. That's just how it is. But in a lot of cases, you know what? If you want that guest, you want to be there, they have to pay for that. That's coming out of their pocket. They have to. And to recoup that, your ticket price has to go up. That's where
maybe a plus side to this is we might see more conventions that focus on independent creators. With the sort of superstar status of the industry right now and how much it's focusing on movies like we talked about,
right.
Maybe we'll start to see more conventions that are trying to
bring it back to the comics.
Exactly. And then you're going to get creator guests that are not necessarily even going to charge you for their time. They want to be there to promote their work,
Right.
like a lot of independent creators do. I mean, we on Capeless are not getting the interviews with the Jim Lees and the Scott Snyders.
Right.
We get interviews with awesome independent creators. Now, I can't tell you who we've got coming up for this show in September yet, because we still have to firmly lock it in. But I mean, we're getting a creator like that because that creator wants to promote their work, because they don't have the USA Today's chasing them down. They don't have the View, they don't have the Disney apparatus putting them out there on the View like Joe Quesada does.
And you know what? I gotta say, even if they did, I think they'd still come to us. That's a mentality of that.
I don't know. I wish, but I've been trying to get Jason Aaron to come and talk with us for a while now, and he's part of the Disney machine now, so he won't have anything to do with it.
That is a little lot. That is pretty big. But you know what I'm saying?
If you're listening, Jason, we just want to talk, man.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying, though? That's that mentality, the garage, the indie book. We're starting out. They started out. We're growing. They're growing. I could see that. That's a mentality. And I see that a lot in indie books. I see a lot of indie creators. You go to the Asbury Comic-Con, it's all indie. We do have our major players, Herb Trimpe's and Bob Camp, and obviously big names as well. But they really focus on the books, and those creators are hungry, and they love to talk about their books. And I think even if you made it big to a certain point, you're going to always keep that. You're going to always remember where you came from.
Well, the person who I think does that the best is Gail Simone.
Yes.
If you read her Twitter feed, that woman, I think she must just write at 30,000 feet. That's like when she does all of her writing. Because it seems like she is always traveling.
Yeah.
From whether, she's going to Scotland, she's going to Portland, she's going to San Francisco, she's going to Washington, she's got to have Dallas.
She's got to have like a triple-sized battery on that phone.
No, she has her husband do all of her tweeting for her while she's at cons.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you ever notice, I follow her Twitter feed religiously because I'm a huge fan, and I know Tom
we follow her.
Too.
Yeah, we follow her.
But while she's actually doing stuff at conventions, it will, they'll put out a disclaimer early in the day that Gail's husband, and he just goes by that. This is Gail's husband. I'm running her Twitter for the rest of the day, and he's the one, tweeting out pictures of her at a panel and people that have lined up to talk to her, and her with he takes the pictures on the phones and sends them out on her Twitter of fans that they get to meet with her and everything. And I mean, it's really cool.
No shit, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Gail's husband. I don't know.
I mean, if you're a guy at a comic convention and you want to seem cool, you're not going to be like, yes, I don't even know what his actual name is. Nobody's going to know who you are. But if you're like, yes, I'm Gail Simone's husband, all of a sudden everybody's going to be swarming you and wanting to know what's Gail's creative process like.
Yeah, he can walk into a con and nobody know who the hell he is.
Unless he wants them to, in which case he just says, I'm Gail Simone's husband.
I'm going to do that in New York City. I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna wear a name tag that says I'm Gail Simone's husband. I'll see what happens. I think I'm really gonna. You're
gonna have the devoted Gail Simone fans that have met her before be like, you are not. I've met him.
Oh, you know what? I might let me consider that. I might even do that just for shits and giggles. My name tag's gonna be I'm Gail Simone's husband. Maybe I'll get an interview. Maybe I'll get an interview out of it with Gail Simone.
That would be too funny.
Wouldn't it be funny if Gail walked up and go, "No, you're not."
You're like, really? I thought we were in New York City, not Utah.
It's a good thing I know what she looks like, because that would be really awkward if I didn't know what she looked like and she walked up to me. I'd be like, "What the hell? You're not Gail Simone." But
that's, there's the next evolution of cosplay I want to see. I want to see people cosplaying as creators.
I go as Jeff Johns. I just wear an Aquaman T-shirt all the time.
No, you need the Green Lantern hat.
Oh yes, that's right.
And the Aquaman T-shirt.
There you go. There you go. That's too funny. Getting back on that topic. Overall, for me, I think this is really just a waste of everybody's time, a waste of a lot of money on both sides. But I don't believe it's going to get settled out of court. I feel whether it's San Diego or Salt Lake City, one of them is going to hold to their guns and they're going to take it all the way to the end. I really feel. And if anything, I think it's going to be Salt Lake to prove a point to some of the small cons. Every other con that's out there. Con. Not convention. We need Captain Kirk. We need William Shatner on Salt Lake.
That needs to, when you're doing your editing, you just toss that in at the beginning.
I think they're going to stick it out. And I think, obviously, if they can afford R8s, they can afford some of these legal fees to prove a point, and it needs to stop. We need to stop this now, as far as I'm concerned. What are your last thoughts on this, Josh?
Well, as I said, earlier, I really do think that San Diego doesn't have much of a case. There are a couple of points where they might get an injunction against Salt Lake City, but I really think that this was a poor knee-jerk reaction to what was, possibly could be considered a shady promotional tactic, but was not really illegal in any sense of the word. While San Diego is the biggest convention in the world, they are not the only convention in the world. They are not the first convention in the world. They are not the first ones to call themselves a Comic-Con. And to do this really does nothing but damage the community, as you said. And I would, the one way I could see this getting settled out of court is I could see San Diego conceivably dropping it.
Who's dropping it? San Diego?
I could see San Diego deciding that, the juice is not worth the squeeze, as the saying goes, and deciding to drop the complaint. And if that happens, then, game on. Call yourself a Comic-Con, which I really think will be the final result anyway.
I agree. And I once again, I could see San Diego being, they're the kind of kids that on the block that proven wrong, they're still going to say yes, and they're going to push it and push it and push it until it's illegal, until it's settled in court.
And if by some legal wizardry they do manage to...
Oh, well, look at that. We just lost Mr. Josh Epstein. What's going on with that? Well, San Diego must have just heard our feed and cut off Mr. Josh Epstein, got into our Skype feed, and took care of what Josh was going to say by that. I don't think they liked what he heard. Let's give him a call back. Be really cool if San Diego was
Comic-Con hackers.
Yeah,
Comic-Con hackers.
San Diego just cut our feed off here. They did not like listening to what you had to say.
Well, the more conventions, with the other things we've talked about, I understand that there are some potential downfalls to there being too many conventions, but I really do think that the more conventions we can have around the country, the better, because in the end, a convention really should be about the community. Mm-hmm. While this is not the same sort of outsider hobby that it has been in years past, there's still a lot to be enjoyed about being in a room full of people who love what you love. And as important as the creators are, as important as publisher announcements and the news they put out at conventions are for outlets like ours, really what it comes down to is that these conventions, these cons, are a forum and a space where people who all love comics can get together and be around like-minded people. And that's the most important thing. And I think that that's something that San Diego would do well to remember. Comic-Con International would do well to remember, because at this point they're creating a divide between people who want to support San Diego as the granddaddy of them all, which it isn't, and people who want to support the up-and-coming conventions. And there shouldn't be a divide. When you create division like that, it's only going to fracture the community, and that's not good for a community. Ours is a small, insular enough community already, with enough stupid arguments going on any given message board, that we don't need another one.
San Diego Comic-Con is now the stereotypical fanboy on your online thread.
They are. And I've gotten into some doozies with some fanboys lately, so I can tell you that I don't support that.
Before we wrap this up, quick question, even though we just gave our last thoughts. Have we had any creators weigh in on this?
I don't think we have. I need to go out and do a little bit of research on it, but...
Can we reach out? Can Capeless reach out to possibly... Can we reach out to Gail Simone?
We can try, but I think that a smart creator is going to stay on the sidelines in this.
You think?
Well, from a strictly business perspective,
listen, I could see Jim Lee.
You don't really want to weigh in.
Well, you know what?
Jim Lee is not gonna cross Comic-Con International.
See, but he's big enough where he can.
You
think San Diego's gonna hurt him by not showing up, by not having him show up, or Jeff Johns? Come on.
No, but I could see them, being like, well, because of the bond issue that we're passing, the expansion we want to do to the hotel, we need to raise the rate for your space by about $10,000.
I don't know. I could see it going both ways. When you're that big, when you're Jim.
Oh, you want Hall H for this? I'm sorry, we already booked it for that time.
No, not true. True. Well, then you're hurting DC overall, and in the long run, you're still hurting. The con is hurting itself.
Yeah, but
I know. I
from a
get it. I
business
get it.
perspective, I don't see many creators really weighing in on this. Although I will go out and see what I can find out on the Twitters. Some of them are fearless. We'll see what happens. Maybe when we've got our big guest on next month, we'll see if we can't trick him into answering that
Let's.
question.
You know who I'm surprised who hasn't said anything was Rob Liefeld. Seriously, I'm not joking you. I'm telling you right now. We should contact him. And you know what? I'm
I
going to
should
reach
just
out.
be
To,
like, Rob, we know you're fearless. Can you share your thoughts on this whole SDCC, SLCC controversy?
I'm gonna reach out to him tomorrow and see for real through Twitter and see if we can get some type of response with him. He's
Well,
fearless.
hopefully we'll have a chance to come back on this. I'm hoping that the people over at Salt Lake City choose to share this. I doubt the people at Comic-Con International will, but maybe it would be interesting if we could maybe get one of the lawyers on to explain their side of the argument.
That probably won't happen. But do you think we could get a Salt Lake City representative?
Possibly. We'll see what we can do. If you're a listener and you want to hear a little bit more about this story and you want to hear us talk with some of the people actually involved, hit them up on Twitter and other social media. Yeah. Tell them you want them to come chat with us.
Tag us, tweet us.
Yes, please do.
And where can I do that, Josh?
Well, that's a very good question, DW. If you want to come and tell me that I'm a communist who's trying to break up a great capitalist organization,
you're a communist. Just put communist.
You can find me on Twitter at Crusaders06. That's ZERO6. Find me on Facebook. You can usually spot me out arguing with various nerds on various forums like Comic Book Nerds or Hot or the IGN Assemble boards. If you want to read any of the great stuff that my team does over on capelesscrusader.org, well, that's where you can go read it, just on capelesscrusader.org. We're recording this on Sunday, so I'm just about to put the finishing touches on Austin Gorton's Market Maven, which is one of my favorite columns over there lately. And we've been doing a lot of good reviews. Mike Staines has been getting back in the habit
yes, he is.
of late, and that review crew, man, they churn out some awesome stuff.
Nice. Also, you can follow me or tweet me at Fanboys Inc. And if you listened to last week's episode or the week before, when we talked about San Diego, I called it San Diego Con. That kind of just sums it all up because they're not anything about comics really anymore. So San Diego, if you're listening, why don't you drop your lawsuit and just call it a con? And that's how I feel after this past year. It's all movies and media. But anyway, like I said, you can tweet me at Fanboys Inc. You can find me over at facebook.com/Fanboys Inc. And as Josh said, go over and check out our articles that our staff is doing a great job at fanboysinc.com. Articles, news, reviews, videos. If
you like that movie stuff, I know Muka is killing it lately.
Oh, my God, he's still killing it. Like I said, I mean, there's so much of it going on. I mean, that's how it is. I mean, we'll get some more reviews up. We'll get more into the comics again. Yeah, go check that out over on Facebook.com. There's a bunch of fun stuff over there. And yeah, I mean, I don't get any hate mail. Nobody sends me anything fun anymore. Send me something on my Twitter feed or something. Jeez, I mean, it's not fair that Josh gets all the good arguments. It's not fair.
Well, in fairness, I go and look for them.
Yeah. Josh, are you trolling?
I have been known to troll on occasion.
Okay, well, don't be any of those patent trolls like what Adam Carolla is going through, because just like Comic Con's podcast could be the next thing to leave now if he loses this case. But yeah, that has been striking up some more, and that seems to be getting heated as well. So maybe San Diego is the comic troll, just like the patent trolls.
Maybe. You know what's really fun is I know that my buddy Adam has guest hosted his show before.
Oh, no
kidding.
kidding.
The Adam Carolla show.
Nice.
Yep. So a little shout out to my buddy Adam Ray out there.
Maybe we can get Adam on and talk about his point of view on some stuff. That'd be pretty cool.
Maybe he was Wolverine once upon a time.
Yes, I remember seeing you show me in those pictures. That's right. All right, guys. What do I want to say? Make sure to check out this podcast will be up tomorrow. You're gonna get a double dose. We didn't do one last week, but we're gonna try to get back on track on Thursdays. So this will be up tomorrow. So guess what? Monday, you're going to get a double dose. You're going to get RSRG, and he's going to be talking about his thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's going to be Guardians Week here on Fanboys Incorporated. So, and then later that day, if you didn't get to listen to us live like you are right now, this Infinite Crossover will be up, and then we will have a new Inkcast where Joe and I will go toe-to-toe on Guardians of the Galaxy, plus so much more, possibly a special guest. And then Thursday will be another Infinite Crossover, and I got a special topic that I haven't told Josh about. I might even, I might just blindside him and just talk about it right on the air, and not even say anything. See if we can get any non-research going on. See if we can get off the cuff. But anyways, check that out on Thursday. Guys, thank you so much for listening and sharing your thoughts with us. And as always, check us out on Facebook, online, both places. We're always here. Josh, if you would, sir.
As always, I will encourage you to remove your headphones, drop the haterade, and go read something.
Don't go to San Diego Comic-Con. Peace.
Oh, that was